project. Very important. Scope planning. Scope planning. What do you do when you plan the scope? You plan the scope. You look at the client requirements. You look at the stakeholder needs and expectations. In other words, it is extremely important to identify who all the relevant stakeholders are on the project, because these are the people who will come with your requirements. They are the ones who are directly affected by the outcome of the project. So you have to identify who they are and who the client is and who the representatives of the client are, because this is the people that you will sit with one-on-one to collect requirements from them. So this is an extremely important exercise to do, because that is the foundation of the scope of work exercise, because that is where all the requirements will come from. Systems thinking. Now, when we look at the scope of work of a project, we have to look at not the project in isolation or the scope of work in isolation. We have to think of the big picture. The big picture, how does things fit into one another? You need to be flexible about this, because the systems thinking to project management is to look at the bigger picture. And if we say the bigger picture, what do we mean? What do we mean by that? We mean, have a look at the project's place in your department, the project in the department, the project in the organization, and the project in the wider context. Can you see that these things refer to the project environment? The project in relation to the department, the project in relation to the organization, the wider organization, and the project in the wider context. For instance, many government projects, if you do government projects, you have to think of much wider in terms of national government, provincial government, and local government to answer these following questions. In so doing, from the systems thinking point of view, you have to identify your constraint. And the constraint, now what is a constraint? If I define constraint very simple, a constraint is something that will prevent the project from achieving its objective. That is a constraint. It's like a stumbling block constraint, and you have to identify it, because it will also cause your scope of work not to be properly defined. So there are internal and external constraints. Right. Scope statement. Now what is the scope statement? What is the scope statement? The scope statement is the justification of the project deliverables. It is description of products. In other words, describe the product. The what needs to be done? You need to bring this product into being, so you need to describe that product. It gives you a summary of the deliverables, all the deliverables involved in bringing. Now be very careful. If you add all the deliverables up, the deliverables will make up the project. So deliverables are broken down of the product. So if you add all the deliverables that make up the product, right, you need to stipulate the project objectives in the scope statement. What is the objective of the project? That will have to be embedded in the scope statement. So can you see that even the critical performance areas are very, very important, because the product and the deliverable will service the critical performance areas. And the most important planning document, ladies and gentlemen, most important planning document on a project is the scope statement. A very crucial planning document. Without the scope statement, the project means nothing. Because what are you going to deliver? Exactly. Scope statement. Justification, description of product, summary of deliverables, project objectives, and critical performance areas.